Welcome to Radio BeFit. I am really excited to get into this deep dive today because, well, picture this. You wake up, you eat a really solid breakfast, you chug a massive cup of coffee, maybe even an energy drink if it's, one of those mornings.
Oh, yeah, we've all been there.
Right. And you head to work, but somehow, by like 10 in the morning, you are staring at your screen feeling like an absolute zombie.
Just totally drained.
Exactly. And you're doing the math in your head thinking, I put the fuel in the tank, I added the caffeine, why am I getting zero energy out of it?
That's the worst.
It is incredibly frustrating. You feel like you're doing all the right things, getting the calories in, forcing the stimulation, and your body just completely refuses to cooperate. All right, let's get into it because the research we're looking at today completely flips this on its head.
It really does. And I think it's one of the most maddening feelings, mostly because the cultural conditioning we've all received tells us that the human body operates like a simple arithmetic problem.
Like calories in equals energy out.
Exactly. We are taught that food equals energy, period. So if you are tired, you must be at a deficit, right? You either need more calories or a stronger stimulant to just, force the system online.
But that usually backfires.
Oh, completely. When people try that, they usually just end up jittery, anxious, and somehow even more deeply exhausted by like 2 in the afternoon.
Yeah, the math is just fundamentally flawed because in the notes for this deep dive, the thing that immediately jumped out at me is that we completely misunderstand what food actually is.
We really do.
We look at a bagel or a bowl of oatmeal and we think of it as energy, but it is not. It's only potential energy. Like the chemical bonds in that food do absolutely nothing for your fatigue until your body actively breaks them apart.
Yes, and that conversion process,
Yeah.
that is where the entire energy equation breaks down for most people.
Okay, so walk me through that. What's actually breaking down?
Well, when you digest food, you're simply breaking it down into basic building blocks, things like glucose or fatty acids.
Right.
But your cells cannot use glucose directly to, say, fuel your brain or contract your muscles. It doesn't work like that.
Wait, really? Because you always hear about blood sugar and glucose being energy.
It's the precursor.
Yeah.
It has to be converted into a very specific cellular currency called ATP, adenosine triphosphate.
Okay, ATP.
Yeah, and that conversion happens inside those tiny structures in your cells called mitochondria. So if your mitochondria are not efficiently running that conversion process, you could eat 5,000 calories a day and still feel like you're starving for energy
Wow.
because all those calories are just, sitting there as unused potential.
A metaphor that helped this finally click for me, and this was from the source material, is thinking of mitochondria like foreign currency exchange booths.
I love this analogy.
Right, it makes so much sense. Imagine you're traveling and you have €1,000,000 in your suitcase. You're technically rich. That is your food. Massive potential.
Well, you can't spend it.
Exactly. If you are standing in a tiny coffee shop in rural Ohio, they don't accept euros. You cannot buy a cup of coffee. You have to find an exchange booth to turn those euros into local cash, which is the ATP.
Yep.
So if the exchange booth is closed or if the workers inside are, overwhelmed and functioning at half speed, it does not matter how much foreign currency you dump on the counter. You are leaving empty-handed.
It's such a perfect way to look at it because it gets to the core of how dynamic these structures really are. Because for decades, we were taught the old high school biology definition, right?
The powerhouse of the cell.
The powerhouse of the cell, exactly. It paints this picture of these dumb mechanical furnaces that just passively burn whatever fuel you shovel into them.
Those endlessly burning.
Right. But the reality is that mitochondria are highly sophisticated environmental sensors. They exist in a network. They're constantly communicating with each other and reading the biochemical state of your body.
So they're actually paying attention to what's going on outside the cell.
Oh, absolutely. They monitor your stress hormones, your core temperature, your inflammatory markers, even your sleep cycles.
So if the environment is chaotic, the exchange booth actually changes its operating hours.
More than that, it actively barricades the door.
Barricades the door.
Yeah. When mitochondria sense an environment of high chronic stress or inflammation or a severe lack of sleep, they undergo a structural shift. They initiate something called the cell danger response.
The cell danger response. Okay, that sounds intense.
It is. They literally stop prioritizing the production of ATP, and they shift their resources towards cellular defense. They reduce their energy output because the signals they're receiving are screaming that the body is under attack.
Wow, so they're basically saying now is not the time to make cash. We need to board up the windows.
Precisely. Producing abundant, free-flowing energy in a state of perceived biological threat is just not a priority for survival.
Which perfectly explains that heavy, sluggish feeling you get after eating a massive lunch on a deeply stressful workday.
Oh, that classic food coma.
Yeah. You eat this huge meal thinking, I need energy to push through these afternoon deadlines. You dump all this foreign currency on the counter. But because your stress hormones are peaking, your mitochondria have shifted into defense mode.
The exchange booth is closed.
It's closed. 20 minutes later, you are practically paralyzed at your desk, realizing the food didn't give you energy at all. It just triggered a massive digestive burden that honestly just makes you want to crawl under your desk and sleep.
Exactly. Which means the most practical thing you can do when you hit that afternoon wall is to stop trying to force more stimulation into a system that is actively resisting it.
So no third cup of coffee.
Right. If your exchange booths are shut down due to environmental chaos, pouring a third cup of coffee on top of it is just whipping a tired horse.
Because caffeine doesn't actually make ATP, right?
No, it doesn't create ATP at all. It just temporarily blocks the receptors in your brain that tell you you're tired. You are masking the dashboard warning light without actually fixing the engine.
That is such a common trap.
It is. The goal has to shift from shocking the system to actually improving the cellular environment so the mitochondria feel safe enough to open for business again.
Okay, so if the goal is making the environment safe, we have to look at what is making it so chaotic in the first place. Which brings us to the classic wired but tired phenomenon.
Oh, yes. The modern epidemic.
Listeners know this feeling intimately. You are exhausted, you're dealing with brain fog, you have zero physical motivation, even on a Sunday when you are technically resting, but your brain is racing a million miles an hour and you just cannot settle down.
Yeah, to understand why that happens, you have to look at how your body distributes the energy it actually manages to produce. Your nervous system is constantly doing accounting.
Accounting.
Yeah, think of it as having three main physiological lanes for energy traffic.
Okay, free lanes.
The first lane is your basic survival function.
Yeah.
This keeps your heart beating, your lungs expanding, your core temperature stable.
Yeah.
It's non-negotiable. The second lane is the threat response. This is your sympathetic nervous system, your fight or flight mechanism fueled by cortisol and adrenaline. It is designed for short-term performance when a predator is chasing you.
Right, the emergency lane.
Exactly. And then the third lane is repair and adaptation. This is where your body builds muscle tissue, executes deep sleep architecture, balances the immune system, and consolidates memory.
But wait, if we are talking about threats and stress, isn't exercise the stress? Isn't learning a complex new skill a stress? We definitely don't want to eliminate those things, right? Because biology usually rewards us for them.
That's a great point. The differentiation comes down to the duration and the recovery. It's the difference between acute and chronic stress.
Okay, so acute is short term.
Right. Acute stress like a heavy weightlifting session, a cold plunge, or even just a challenging work presentation is incredibly beneficial. It creates a brief spike in that second lane, the threat response, but then the stressor ends.
And then what happens?
Your body returns to baseline, and it shuttles energy into the third lane to repair the micro tears in your muscles or wire the new neural pathways. That process builds resilience.
So it's the bounce back that makes it good.
Exactly. The real problem is chronic, unrecovered stress.
Like waking up to 70 urgent emails, commuting in gridlock traffic, arguing with your boss, worrying about your mortgage, and then, watching negative news until midnight.
Right. When the brain perceives a constant, low-level, unrelenting threat, it assumes immediate survival is the only thing that matters.
So it just diverts everything.
It takes all your available ATP and shoves it continuously into that second lane. And energy is finite. If the threat response lane is permanently hogging the resources, the third lane repair and adaptation is left completely bankrupt.
Wow.
Your body simply will not allocate precious energy to repairing muscle tissue or dropping you into deep restorative sleep if it believes a tiger is perpetually pacing outside your cave.
That explains the insomnia after a chaotic week of deadlines. You feel like you've been putting out fires for 5 days straight, you are bone tired, but you find yourself staring at the ceiling at 2 in the morning, totally wired.
Yep.
Your body is deliberately preventing you from sleeping deeply because it thinks you are on night watch.
That's exactly it. And there is this brilliant piece of research from Columbia University that proves just how deeply this chronic stress alters our biology on a cellular level. It's the gray hair study.
Oh, I read about this in the notes. This is fascinating.
It really is. Researchers wanted to know if psychological stress actually causes hair to lose its pigment, or if that was just, an old wives' tale.
Right, because we intuitively know that just from looking at presidents. They go into office looking vibrant, and 4 years later, they have aged a decade.
Exactly. But they found that human hair does indeed gray during periods of intense psychological stress.
But what is the actual biological mechanism there? How does a bad week at work actually turn a hair gray?
It comes back to that sympathetic nervous system, the second lane of energy allocation. The researchers discovered that the stem cells responsible for producing hair pigment, which are called melanocyte stem cells, they're deeply entwined with sympathetic nerve endings.
Okay, so they're wired right into the stress response.
Yes. When you're under chronic stress, those nerves release a constant wash of norepinephrine. That chemical signal overactivates the stem cells. It forces them to rapidly convert into pigment-producing cells and migrate away from the follicle base.
Wait, so they just empty out?
Essentially, yes. The stress forces the follicle to spend its entire lifetime savings of pigment cells in one massive burst. Once the stem cell reservoir is depleted, the hair grows in gray.
That is wild. The stress response literally bankrupts the stem cell niche because it is running the system at emergency capacity.
Exactly.
But the notes mention a twist in the study that really caught my attention. It isn't just a one-way street, is it?
That is the most incredible part of the whole study. They developed a scanning technique that could map the pigmentation of a single human hair over time, almost like reading the rings of a tree.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they could correlate the exact width of the hair shaft with specific weeks in the person's life. And they found that in several cases, when the individual's life stabilized, like when they went on a 2-week vacation or resolved a major psychological burden, the graying reversed.
It reversed. That's just amazing.
The newly grown hair regained its original dark pigment. It physically proved that the body carries dynamic, reversible traces of stress.
Which is an incredibly hopeful message. Your current state of burnout or exhaustion is not a fixed identity. Your biology is actively shifting back and forth based on the inputs you provide.
Exactly. You are not permanently broken.
But practically speaking, we can't just, quit our jobs and move to a beach. We have mortgages, we have kids, we have modern lives. So how do you shift the energy out of that stress lane when the stressors aren't going away?
Well, the target isn't eliminating stress. That's impossible. It's about deliberately building recovery into your daily rhythm so that threat is not the only physiological signal your body receives. You have to actively fund that third lane of repair.
Send a signal of safety.
Right. If you do not intentionally send a biological signal of safety, your nervous system will default to its evolutionary baseline, which is assuming danger.
I think this is where a massive disconnect happens for a lot of people. Because when they hear, build recovery into your day, the immediate thought is, great, I already do that. When I get home from work, I collapse on the couch and doom scroll social media for 2 hours. That is my rest.
Oh, yeah. A lot of people think that.
But clearly that isn't solving the energy crisis.
It doesn't solve it because true recovery is a neurological state, not just a physical posture.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
Thanks. Sitting on a couch means you have a lack of movement, but it does not mean you have a lack of arousal. When you're scrolling through social media, absorbing polarized news, reading urgent emails, rapid-firing through short-form videos, you are forcing your brain into a state of continuous context switching.
You are sitting still, but your visual cortex and your amygdala are processing outrage, comparison, and urgency every 3 seconds.
Exactly. Every time you scroll past a stressful headline or an envy-inducing post, you get a microdose of adrenaline.
A microdose of adrenaline. Man.
Your nervous system remains in a state of low-level sympathetic activation. As far as your mitochondria are concerned, you are still navigating a threat environment. The physiological noise is deafening.
So it's not rest at all.
Not biologically.
Yeah.
True rest requires dropping out of that sympathetic arousal and activating the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest state.
And this is where people hit a wall, because the moment someone says activate the parasympathetic state, the immediate image is that you have to become a meditating monk.
Right, like you need a whole retreat.
Yeah. You need a 90-minute morning routine, complete silence, burning sage, total mental clarity. And for someone who is already completely overwhelmed by their to-do list, adding a complex mindfulness protocol just feels like another chore they're going to fail at.
Which is precisely why we have to lower the barrier to entry. Sending a signal of safety does not require a retreat to a monastery. It just requires breaking the continuous chain of high-frequency stimulation.
So it can be brief.
It can be incredibly brief. The practical application here is finding just 5 to 10 minutes of low stimulation time. It could be 5 minutes of slow nasal breathing after you close your laptop, purposely making your exhales longer than your inhales.
Because that physically alters your heart rate, right? It isn't just woo-woo mindfulness.
It is pure mechanics. When you extend your exhale, you stimulate baroreceptors in your lungs and blood vessels, which send a signal up the vagus nerve to your brain, essentially applying the brake to your heart rate. It chemically shifts you out of the threat lane. Or you could also just take a 10-minute walk outside without headphones. No podcast, no music, just ambient environmental noise.
The physical relief of just leaving your phone in another room is actually shocking once you pay attention to it.
It really is.
If you just leave it on the charger in the bedroom, walk into the kitchen to make a cup of tea, and sit there for 15 minutes without a glowing rectangle in your hand, you will suddenly realize how intensely your shoulders were hunched up by your ears.
You hold so much tension.
Yeah, you notice how shallow your breathing was. Just the sheer absence of digital input sends a massive signal of safety to the mitochondria. And hey, I just want to say, if this deep dive is helping you connect some of these dots and rethink your own energy, leaving a like or a quick comment really does mean a lot. It helps us know what is actually useful to you, and honestly, it keeps us excited to keep digging into this research.
It really does. And what is fascinating is that sending those signals of safety isn't just about managing your screen time. It ties directly into how we manage our digestion.
Because the parasympathetic state is literally called rest and digest.
Exactly. But this is another area where people are getting utterly paralyzed by extreme advice on the internet, particularly the obsession with fasting.
Oh man, the fasting debates are out of control.
Tell me about it.
It feels like the rules change every single week. First, it was skipping breakfast, then it was one meal a day, then it was, pushing through the misery of hunger for 48 hours because some influencer said it would optimize your cellular longevity.
Right, and people are just confused and ending up more exhausted.
Completely exhausted.
The confusion stems from treating fasting as a blunt instrument of restriction rather than a biological rhythm. Digestion is one of the most metabolically expensive processes the human body performs.
It takes a lot of energy.
A massive amount of ATP. It takes energy to break down complex proteins, absorb nutrients across the intestinal wall, and manage the resulting spikes in insulin and blood sugar. When you are grazing from the moment you wake up until the moment your head hits the pillow, your cells are perpetually locked in the demanding work of digestion and storage.
So if digestion uses so much energy, is skipping a meal essentially starving the system to force it to stop working and take a break? Because, forcing the body into starvation sounds a lot like the threat response we were just talking about.
It absolutely can be, which is why extreme forced fasting often backfires and destroys energy levels. This is particularly true for women, whose endocrine systems are highly sensitive to calorie restriction.
So what's the better way to look at it?
Let's look at the actual cellular mechanism. We need to talk about two competing biological pathways, MTR and AMPK.
Okay, MTR and AMPK.
Right. So MTOR is the growth and building pathway, activated by nutrients, specifically amino acids and insulin. AMPK is the low-energy sensor. When you stop eating and insulin drops, AMPK goes up. It acts like a cellular supervisor that realizes the factory floor is quiet, so it decides it's a good time to do maintenance.
And that maintenance is what people are trying to trigger with fasting, right? That term mitophagy.
Yes, mitophagy. Think of mitophagy like a highly trained night shift cleaning crew inside a massive office building. Over time, mitochondria get damaged by the metabolic stress of producing energy.
They just wear out.
Exactly. They start leaking free radicals, becoming inefficient. The cleaning crew's job is to come in, identify these damaged mitochondria using chemical tags called ubiquitin, and literally sweep them into a cellular incinerator called lysosome.
A cellular incinerator, that's awesome.
It's very efficient. This clears the junk so new, highly efficient mitochondria can take their place.
Yeah.
But here's the catch. The cleaning crew cannot do their job if the office building is still full of people working.
Ah, that makes the late-night snacking habit look completely different.
Oh, entirely.
If you are eating a bowl of cereal or like a sleeve of crackers at 11:30 at night, you are keeping the office open. You are forcing insulin to spike, which suppresses AMPK.
Right.
The cleaning crew is just standing in the supply closet waiting for the party to end so they can mop the floors, but the party never ends.
And worse than just waiting in the closet, the metabolic burden of digesting that late-night food while you are lying horizontally disrupt your core body temperature and your heart rate variability.
So it messes with your sleep, too.
It fractures your deep sleep architecture. You are actively preventing the third lane of energy allocation from doing its job. It's not about starving the body to punish it. It is simply about closing the office so the maintenance crew has clearance to work.
So we don't need to do a grueling 3-day water fast to get the benefits. We just need to give the system a basic, reliable window of time where it isn't processing food.
Exactly. The practical application here is incredibly simple, but highly effective. Try a 12-hour overnight break.
Just 12 hours.
That's it. If you finish your dinner at 7 in the evening, simply do not consume calories again until 7 the next morning. Finish your last meal 2 to 3 hours before you go to bed. Let your insulin drop natively. Let your body temperature cool down.
And then what about the morning?
When you break that fast in the morning, do it with a solid, protein-rich breakfast to signal safety and abundance to the system.
Which is so relevant because the trap most people fall into is entirely backwards.
Yeah, completely backwards.
You skip lunch because you're slammed with meetings, you run on cortisol and caffeine all afternoon, and then by 10 at night, the threat response fades and your body screams for the calories it was denied.
And then you binge.
You binge right before bed, your digestion works overtime while you try to sleep, you wake up exhausted, and the whole zombie cycle starts over again.
And breaking that cycle starts with just understanding the mechanics. Knowledge really is your best personal trainer in this regard.
Yeah, for sure.
That is kind of the foundational philosophy behind BeFit.ai, helping people understand their own physiology in a way that actually clicks and applies to real life. There are plenty of free articles over there if you want to dig deeper into the science of mitophagy or circadian eating after you finish listening to this. Because when you finally grasp the why behind these cellular processes, the what stops feeling like a chore.
It makes total sense. So let's shift to the what regarding physical movement.
Oh.
Because if the food rhythm brings in the cleaning crew and sleep is the time they operate, exercise has to be the primary signal that tells the body to build more offices in the first place, right?
Absolutely.
How do we actually increase our physical capacity to generate energy? The problem is most people view exercise entirely through the lens of burning calories to shrink their bodies, or they get totally paralyzed by the intensely granular debates over things like zone 2 cardio.
Oh, this is zone 2 debates. Movement is arguably the most potent direct signal you can send to your mitochondrial network. When you contract a muscle, it creates an immediate, localized demand for ATP.
Right, the muscle needs energy right then.
You breathe harder to pull in more oxygen, your blood vessels dilate, and your cells receive an undeniable biochemical message. The current energy capacity is insufficient for the environment. We must adapt.
So the body realizes it needs to upgrade.
Exactly. Over time, the body responds through a process called mitochondrial biogenesis. It literally builds more exchange booths and makes the existing ones larger and more efficient. But the mistake people make is believing there's only one perfect way to send that signal.
I will completely admit I fell into the zone 2 trap a while back.
You did.
Oh, yeah. I was listening to all the optimization deep dives, and I became obsessed. I was trying to perfectly track my heart rate, walking on a treadmill at a very specific incline, and if my heart rate bumped up by 3 beats per minute, I would panic and slow down.
That sounds stressful.
It was. I got so hyper-focused on maintaining this narrow, magical physiological window that I basically stopped doing everything else, including lifting weights. Working out stopped being a stress relief mechanism and became a massive source of anxiety.
You are definitely not alone in that. The pendulum swung incredibly hard toward Zone 2 over the last few years. And to be fair, physiologically, Zone 2 is important.
It is, right?
Yeah, it represents the intensity level where your body is maximizing fat oxidation for fuel and your lactate levels remain below 2 millimoles per liter. It's fantastic for building aerobic efficiency without creating a massive systemic stress load.
So what's the issue then?
Well, there was a major 2025 research review on this exact phenomenon that highlighted a huge blind spot. The review showed that while steady aerobic work is a great foundation, it is not uniquely magic, and it is certainly not the only way to improve mitochondrial function.
So if steady-state cardio builds the base, but strength training gives us the muscle tissue, it seems like doing only one is like building a massive engine block, but forgetting to install the fuel injectors. You have to have both types of stress to complete the circuit, right?
That is a brilliant way to frame it because they operate on completely different biological pathways.
Oh, so
Aerobic work creates metabolic stress, which increases the density of the mitochondria. But strength training creates mechanical stress, which builds the actual muscle fibers. And muscle tissue is the largest glycogen sink in your entire body. It's the primary site for glucose disposal.
Okay, wait, so having more muscle literally changes how your body handles the food you eat.
Profoundly. When you have healthy, active muscle tissue, something incredible happens during contraction. The muscle cells can actually pull glucose out of your bloodstream and shuttle it across the cell membrane using transporters called GLUT4.
GLUT4, okay.
And they can do this independently of insulin.
Wait, really? Without insulin?
Yes. Just the mechanical act of lifting something heavy forces your body to clear sugar from the blood and use it for energy. If you only ever do easy, steady-state cardio, you are missing out on the massive metabolic buffer that strength training provides.
That contrast is huge. I mean, think about the sheer frustration of trying to perfectly execute some overly complex biohacking protocol you saw online. You're tracking your heart rate variability, your sleep stages, your exact lactate threshold, and it leaves you so mentally drained you can barely function.
It's exhausting just thinking about it.
Compare that to the steady, reliable, undeniable energy you get from just committing to a simple daily walking habit and lifting some heavy weights a few times a week.
The simplest interventions are often the most biologically powerful. For a practical target, you really don't need a spreadsheet. Aim for a beautifully balanced week.
What does that look like?
Get 2 to 4 easy or moderate aerobic sessions, and that is your brisk walking, rucking with a weighted backpack, or easy cycling. It builds the base. Then add in 2 to 4 strength training sessions, depending on your recovery capacity. Challenge the muscles mechanically. And beyond the gym, just incorporate simple, non-exercise daily movement.
Like just taking the stairs.
Exactly.
Carrying your own groceries, doing some yard work, breaking up the continuous hours of sitting. Because the body doesn't know if you're wearing expensive gym clothes, it only knows if the muscle is contracting.
That's right. Every time you move, you are sending a signal to the mitochondria that energy is required, and they will adapt to meet that demand.
It really is an entire interconnected ecosystem to pull all these threads together. Human energy is a complex, dynamic system. It is absolutely not a simple math equation of calories in and output out.
Not at all.
You improve your energy by sending better, clearer signals to your cellular exchange booths. You do that by respecting your food rhythm and giving the mitophagy cleaning crew time to work, protecting your sleep, pulling your nervous system out of chronic fight or flight through low stimulation rest, and sending a diverse mix of movement signals to your muscles.
Beautifully summarized. And, if you're listening to this right now and you're thinking, I am just tired all the time,
Yeah.
please take a deep breath and realize that you are not broken.
Yeah, absolutely.
You do not lack willpower. Your body is doing exactly what it evolved to do. It's responding perfectly to the environmental signals it has been given. If you change the signals, you will change the biological response. But I do need to add one important medical caveat to all of this.
Good call. What is it?
If your fatigue is severe, persistent, or feels completely unmanageable regardless of your lifestyle habits, please go get lab work done with a doctor. Lifestyle changes are incredibly powerful, but they cannot outwork an underlying medical condition like severe anemia, a thyroid disorder, or undiagnosed sleep apnea.
That is a crucial reminder. Rule out the clinical issues first. Well, to wrap this deep dive up, I want to leave you with something provocative to chew on as you go about the rest of your day.
There.
If your body is perfectly, flawlessly allocating its energy based on the exact life you are living and the signals you are sending right now, what is it preparing you for?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Is it preparing you for a life of constant, exhausting emergencies where you are just barely surviving the day? Or is it preparing you for a life of capability, physical resilience, and growth? It is a pretty profound question to ask yourself the next time you decide how to spend your evening.
It really is. The power is entirely in the signals you choose to send. Thank you so much for spending this time and exploring this with us.
We will catch you on the next deep dive. Take care of yourselves.